Welcome back to another episode of Celebrating Success, Embracing Failure, and Inspiring the Entrepreneur Inside of You. I'm your host, Rebel Saklocha, and today I am joined by Engler alum Zach Settje of Settje AgriServices and Engineering. Thanks for being here, Zach.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
So before we dive into the different facets of your business, give us the rundown of your upbringing and when you became interested in entrepreneurship.
Sure, yeah. So I was born and raised at Raymond, Nebraska, went to Raymond Central High School, was involved in my dad's family's ag operations growing up, so row crop and diversified ag up there in Lee, Nebraska. So I was around cattle a lot, some row crop farming, and always had kind of the ties there, but you know, we did not directly farm or raise cattle growing up. I showed cattle. That was about the extent of it. And from there, I, kind of meandered through high school, I think like we all do, and got introduced to Tom Field and joined the Engler program. I was actually very committed to going to Iowa State for the Ag Business and International Agribusiness program at Iowa State, but I met Tom. He introduced me to some of the Engler alumni and people that are still my close friends today, and I got involved in the program and changed my mind and came to UNL. So that's how I ended up here.
Awesome. So give us the rundown of what your experience in the Engler program was like throughout college, and then, what that relationship has been like as an alumni and coming back to do things like the podcast. I've seen you at a few different events. How has the Engler program impacted you personally?
Yeah, it's, to be honest, it was the highlight of my college career and my favorite thing to do in terms of the classes, the organization, and the, kind of like we say, the overall mindset and the experience of the Engler program. I went through 275 with Dave Lamb as a freshman and wrote a business plan that actually transpired very well, not super intentionally, but coincidentally, to take our family business and expand it internationally. And so I did that my freshman year of college. It was kind of my, I'd call it a pipe dream kind of thing. And then over time, I got more involved in the Engler program. I was in 388 and couple of Tom's classes. I TA'd for Dave a couple of semesters, and I just really enjoyed it. I mean, the mindset of the Engler program and the academic experience in itself was really enjoyable in college because you kind of got to do what you wanted and what was valuable, not what people told you and what they thought was valuable. And so as college went on, I kept finding myself less and less interested in the traditional classes and information and structure behind those, and more interested in the really the unknown or the unstructured world that Engler kind of embraces. So,
absolutely. So, tell us about your family business and a 10,000-foot view of what you offer and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So, Settje AgriServices and Engineering was started by my dad, Dean, in 1997. A year after I was born. So I was obviously very involved in it from a young age, just doing everything around the shop, servicing vehicles, running to job sites as needed. But we are a design and construction firm for livestock facilities, so we don't really do any commercial or industrial projects. We focus primarily on beef feedlots, on dairies, on swine facilities, and poultry facilities. So we design those to a certain spec to meet what the livestock producer is needing, what they want, what is operational and what is feasible for them, and then we take it to a construction standpoint after that. So we do a variety of projects. I would say 75 to 80% of them are beef focused. We do some dairy projects, a lot of engineering in the dairy world, and swine and poultry as it comes up, but those aren't quite our core wheelhouse of in the species realm of it. So we also have a couple other services in the business. We have an environmental compliance service, so we do record keeping for registered CAFOs in the state of Nebraska, and Kansas, Colorado, and South Dakota, a couple in Iowa as well. And we do that, so we have a service and online software program for that. We have a manure management service where we buy manure from those livestock facilities and then sell it basically as a broker to farmers, arrange the logistics, the spreading, and that sort of thing. So
Awesome.
Those are kind of our core wheelhouses. We've taken on some different kind of ventures or sectors in the last year or two. One of those being what we'd call an innovation and sustainability division, where we're focusing on methane digesters, specifically for dairies and beef feedlots. We're focusing on carbon intensity scoring for feedlots and for dairies, and a variety of services in that realm, and that's still in its infancy, and we're still trying to figure out exactly where it's going to go, but it's been interesting. So.
Definitely. So the business started in 1997. Take us through the timeline of the different growth stages of the business.
Yeah. So my dad started in 97, like I said, with my great uncle, Dale. He was an engineer. My dad is not. And so they started doing some design and engineering services, and then we grew into the compliance service kind of as a afterthought. So we were engineering facilities to meet environmental standards, to meet the Nebraska state requirements, EPA requirements, and that sort of thing. From there, like I said, we grew into the compliance side and started an online software to basically do the record-keeping services for that, and then we submit annual reports, do permit renewals for those livestock producers. Kind of at the same time, we started noticing, this was probably 2007, 2008, that we needed to provide a construction service. And so my dad started building feedlots, and basically as a construction manager was managing the design and then construction and operation from a compliance standpoint of those feedlots. So in a nutshell, what I like to say is we do everything with livestock facilities besides operate them. We don't do anything with buying or selling cattle. We don't do anything with nutrition or vet services. So we do we call it the infrastructure, the regulatory, the design and construction, and that sort of thing.
There you go. So you obviously had a very entrepreneurial upbringing, exposed to all of this, growing up. Did you ever consider not returning to the family business and kind of pursuing other ideas?
Yeah. So that started kind of in high school, when everyone starts thinking about, well, what do I want to do with my life? And I didn't really know for sure, but I had a strong interest in high school in golf courses, and I was working on a couple of golf courses. I really enjoyed it. So I thought in my middle years of high school, I thought I was going to be a golf course manager. And something clicked. I think it was getting really involved in FFA in my later years of high school that I said, no, I want to be an ag. And so I changed to general agribusiness, and I had traveled internationally a couple of times in high school with some youth leadership programs. So independently, I'd went to Europe, went to China, and that kind of sparked the international interests that I had. And so coming into college, like I said, I wasn't really dead set or had my mind made up on being in the family business, but I knew I wanted to be an ag, and that was when I started that business plan with Dave Lamb that I was going to take our family business internationally. From there, I went through probably sophomore, junior year of college, kind of thinking I might go to the family business, but maybe not right away, see what else there is to offer. My senior year of college, I basically made the decision about the first semester of senior year that I was going to go back to the family business. And so, my dad and I started planning for that. And then I threw him a big curveball because I got thrown a curveball. And I was offered a job with a company that was doing ag development and consulting for farms in Eastern Africa. And so that possibility or opportunity was something that I wasn't expecting, and it kind of caught me by surprise. But I said, I can't not do this. Like I have to try it. And so right out of college, I worked for that company for about a year to a year and a half. I traveled off and on to Africa, and I worked in Lincoln when I wasn't in Africa, but that was a great experience, something I will remember forever. And that was where, when I went back to the family business, I knew that I was going to be working in the family business in our core services, which I did, but I also had this vision or this idea in the back of my mind that I was going to do the international projects. So
yeah, so did you have ties that through this experimentation with Dave Lamb where you were looking international anyway, and then you got this international opportunity? Was it almost like, the stars are aligning now, this is making sense? What did you pick up from that you brought back now to the business?
It was kind of the stars were aligning, and it wasn't really by direct connection that I had seen that opportunity. It, like I said, kind of caught me off guard. Come to find out later that the guy who had hired me was kind of referred to hire me by Tom Field. And so I'm sure Tom and Dave knew all about my big aspirations. So it kind of connected, in a roundabout way.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't by some intentional plan that I had laid out.
Definitely. So back to the transition, you finished this experience. What did the transition back to the family business look like, and what were those dynamics like?
Yep. So I'm very fortunate that our family business, my dad obviously owns and operates the business. I'm a partner in it now, but when I came back in, he laid it out to me and he said, there's a chance that someday you will be running and owning this business, but we're not going to assume that. We're going to assume that you're an employee and you're gonna do what the employees do, and you're gonna work just like the rest of them. And I said, well, that's fine. I don't know anything else, so that's what I'm gonna do. So when I came back, I started in construction management, and I ran various construction sites for us around the state for about 2 years. Learned a lot in that process, and I would not trade it for anything, as I came back in at the lowest level of the business in terms of out there, in the mud, in the dirt, setting pumps, pouring concrete, all the above, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot of days where I sit, I'm in a different position now, and I'm in my office a lot more, that I sit there and I think, man, I'd love to be out in the field getting stuff done, seeing things happen. So that was kind of the initial transition. The thing that my dad was, I don't know if the right word is wise or generous. He involved me in the leadership team from the moment I came back. And so for a couple of years, I got to sit in on more confidential and private and strategic conversations about the business. And I contributed very little, but I learned just so much through that process. And so by the time I was in a leadership position in the business, I had been kind of apprentice to it for a couple of years while my day job was still out there producing results on job sites. So
definitely. That's awesome. How do you think your boots on the ground experience doing that physical labor impacted your leadership abilities in the position that you're at now?
Yeah, so I think a lot about that, and I think about I could not do what I do in the leadership capacity and in the business management capacity right now. I could not do that without the experience I had on the ground. If I had came back in a few years later and was, older and wiser, and they said, yeah, you can have this leadership position, I would have been very, kind of hamstrung and unaware of what goes on from a day-to-day operation standpoint in the field. So it was invaluable because I could have the conversations with people in our business, not just generic conversations like, you need to make a schedule, and then you need to schedule the subcontractors, and then you need to get all those contracts signed, and then start building it. Like, that sounds very generic, but I would dig into the details, and I would say, well, why is the schedule 2.5 months long? It should be 2, or it should be 3.5. And why are you using that subcontractor? He's not suited for this job. And so I knew the tactical pieces of the business to help lead people rather than kind of that higher echelon of generic speaking that I think managers can have at times.
Definitely. So now you've had the opportunity to integrate some of your own ideas into the day-to-day operations. What does your role look like on a daily basis?
So for a long time, and I would say it's still relevant, I have the nickname in the company, Zach of all trades. So for a long time, I was doing a little bit of everything. I ran a lot of our design projects for the international side of it. And so really my day-to-day role now is more of an operations management standpoint. If you put a title to it to make sense of it, my father is the CEO or the visionary of the business, and I'm the COO or the integrator. So when he has big ideas or makes big sales and starts big concepts and projects, I'm kind of the one who takes that and says, now let's iron out all the details and execute and implement it. And so I work with basically everyone in our company on a daily or weekly basis of, tactical things that happen in the business all the time.
So talk more about the international component that you've added to the business and some of the international travels that you've had recently.
Yeah, so like I said, I had a great opportunity from a young age in high school to start traveling. I did a couple of times in college. I did a study abroad, and then one time in college, a friend of mine who was also in the Engler program, Brandon Nichols, I caught Brandon out of the blue, and I said, hey, let's go to Australia. There's a lot of feedlots there. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I just want to go to Australia, but I also want to see things that we know. So we went to a bunch of ranches and a bunch of feedlots across eastern Australia. So it was kind of just a thing where I'm like, if I have time or if I have money, I'm going to go do it myself. And then, like I said, I got that job out of college going to Africa, a great experience. Came back into the business, as I said, in construction management. And as construction management, about a year into the business, we had a big client come across our desk, and we toured them around some dairies that we had built. They were dairy customers from Russia. So they were in the U.S., they were from Russia. We toured them around, and we basically cut a deal with them that we were going to start consulting and designing for all of their operations. And so after I transitioned out of construction management, for about a year, I was full-time project management for this company in Russia, along with, various other things in the business. I failed to mention, I run the marketing and software development in our business. We have a couple of employees that really spearhead that for me. But on a day-to-day standpoint, I was running an international project for the first year, 2020, in COVID.
Oh, gosh.
So we started working with them in January of 2020. We had a trip scheduled for the end of March in 2020.
Oh, no.
And, of course, March 2020 was when COVID blew up and the whole world shut down. And so we had a huge challenge and a huge pivot, but we managed to make it work remotely. I'm not a fan of remote work. I'm not a fan of working with a customer when you haven't been to their farm or seen the ground they're dealing with or the conditions that they are, especially in eastern Russia, western Russia, sorry. So we limped along for about 9 months with them. And then finally we got to go there about a year after we started working with them in April of 2021. So that was last year. We went there for about 2 weeks, did surveying, did design, just worked on everything under the sun. And I went there 2 other times last year, and then I was there in January of 2022, this year. So I was there this year. We worked on this very large dairy project that they had. We were designing and basically taking on a consulting project management role for them for a $250 million dairy complex. Wow. It would have been the largest in that, probably half of the country in Russia. So we started working with them on that early on, and then by 2022, it was like wheels on the ground. We were making plans to break ground this summer. I mean, it was a go, And then Russia invaded Ukraine.
Oh my!
A week later, 2 weeks later. So I was there.
Oh,
I left
no.
February 2nd of 2022 this year, and February 22nd is when they invaded. So that was, the risk that I always knew we ran with international projects, but specifically with Russia, was this could go up in flames at any time for any reason. And so whether it's a war, which is what happened, or whether it's a economic crisis, or whether the customer just gets cold feet and backs out and you never hear from him again, all those things have happened and have affected our international projects. I didn't really take it too personally. I didn't really take it to heart. It was kind of my baby or my heart and soul for about a year there, because it was something that I just enjoyed. I learned how to speak, read, and speak and read Russian. So I was almost to a conversational standpoint with the owner of that company. so that was really interesting, really fun. But yeah, it kind of shut down. And at the same time in Russia, when I was there in January, I visited 2 other prospects for feedlot projects there. I visited a guy who I had some mutual connections with, a Russian national, who I was going to make an offer to hire to work for us over there. So we had all of the gears turning, and Vladimir Putin decided to shut that down. So
oh my goodness.
That was the risk that we ran, though, operating in Russia. But outside of that, we've done various other design projects. I did a small design for a dairy in Jamaica. We've done a feedlot design in Pakistan. We're working on one right now in Portugal, Australia, and potentially one coming up in another country in the Middle East. I've traveled quite a bit on prospecting and on live projects for our company. And then, when my wife and I go on vacation, we don't specifically go to Cancun. We try to go to, she likes the beach, so we try to go somewhere off the beaten path a little. So I'm just kind of that way. But the international side of it's been a big passion of mine, will continue to be, and I just have to figure out how to scale that now that my responsibilities in the company are growing and I can't spend a week out of every quarter in Russia or whatever country it might be. Russia's off the table now anyways, but
fair enough.
Yeah. So that was kind of the overview of all that. The thing about international business that people don't really realize or understand all the time is it's not that fun. Like, it sounds fun, it sounds cool, but it is cold, hard negotiations with Russians that you think are just don't care about you as a person. I mean, like, if you and I are sitting here and I'm selling you something, you're going to say, I respect Zach, and I'm going to say I respect you. Like, that's just, kind of the American customs. It's not that way everywhere else. And so it's clunky. The communication barrier is always a problem, although it's not as big as most people think because most people outside the U.S. do speak English. It's a lot of time away from home, and even when you're not home, or when you are home, you're either working in a different time zone with your clients, or you're recovering from the last trip and trying to adjust back to American life. I specifically remember one time I came home from Russia, and I was driving about 95 mile an hour down I-80 coming back from Omaha, and I realized, oh, hold on, this is just how everyone in Russia drives because they drive like maniacs. I need to back off and be an American again. So it's just like things like that you think, oh, this, the international side is fun. I love it. But it is a whirlwind of challenges and a whirlwind of emotions when you're working with those customers. So,
yeah. So given all those challenges, what about it keeps you wanting to do these projects, given that there are so many barriers and challenges?
Excuse me. So given all the challenges with that, I guess what keeps me going back is it's kind of the unknown. And, like we were talking about with the Engler program and the classes, it's very unstructured. It's almost like you come in as a freshman, you're like, I don't even know what this place means or what it is. And you just figure it out and you go. And you adjust and you try to sell things, you try to make money, and then you have to execute on them. And that's really, in a sense, that's just what entrepreneurship is. And so for me, that's the real fun of it, is like I very much enjoy working across the different aspects of our company and the structures behind it and the procedures that we have. I'm a very organized and I would say routine-based person, but when I get on these international projects, it's like the Wild West, It's you make it up as you go and you figure it out and you write the rule book, and so that's what's so fun to me about it.
Definitely. So in Engler, we talk a lot about the peaks and valleys of running a business. Back to your Russia project, you said you weren't too emotionally affected by the curveballs that you experienced. How do you keep a level head when you're throwing those things, when you are operating in the Wild West, as you called it?
Yeah. Well, a couple things with that. I mean, I feel like business in general, especially when you own and or operate a business, is just a roller coaster. And there's there's no way around it. I mean, there's days where you're just on top of the world, like, yeah, we made all these sales or we closed out these projects, it's perfect. And then there's the next day where you find out a key employee is going to leave, or you find out that a project has backed out and the sale's not going to get closed. And I mean, there's no normal days. There's either really good days or fairly poor days, and that's just kind of something I've come to adjust to. But with Russia, it was the same thing. The cultures that I dealt with and the people that I dealt with were very pleasant people personally, very nice, very welcoming, very accommodating, but their business culture is totally different. And for example, I'd make them a proposal. I'd say $100,000 for this, this, and this. And they'd come back and they'd say, we accept your proposal, but we're only going to pay you $30,000. And I, like, if I said that to you in the U.S., you would be insulted and you'd be like, to heck with this, I'm not working with that guy. But for me over there, I'm in their territory. I'm like, I got to get something done here. I mean, after a while, it was like playing hardball. And so I figured out that they really had no kind of displayed mutual respect, and it was more about who's the tougher guy in the room here. And so that was kind of how we held our negotiations, was a roller coaster.
Sure, like that was a learning curve.
It was. I mean, there were days where I walked out of that office in Veliki Luki, Russia, and I was thinking, what the heck am I doing here? Like, this is a waste of my time. I could be making so much more difference in money and everything else back in the U.S. And then there were days where I'm like, I'm going to remember this forever. Like, this is the highlight of my career so far. And I think that's sort of transpires to entrepreneurship too, whether you're running a business or starting one or going back to a family business. There's days where you're sitting there thinking, what is going on? Like, this is a disaster. And then there's days where you're just on top of it. And that's the nature of it. That's why we do what we do. So.
Absolutely. So we've talked about all of the cool projects that you've been working on and that sort of thing, but I'd like to switch gears a little bit to dive more into the family business aspect of your company. What is that like, owning and operating a business with your family members, and how do you maintain those relationships in those different settings? Mm-hmm.
So some context behind our immediate family dynamic and the business is my mom is very not uninvolved, but just does not get involved in the family business. She is a pharmacist. She has her own things that she likes to do. And so even when I'm over for family dinner and Dad and I are talking about work, she's, kind of listening, but she doesn't really get that engaged. And then my sister Hannah, she's involved in it from a marketing standpoint, has been doing different things for the last, 7 or 8 years with the family business, and is doing her own thing now in her own career and her own job. So it's mostly, at this time, my father and I. And the dynamics there of, my dad and I have always had an outstanding relationship. I would say from other people I know and other family businesses I know, our relationship is in, the top 10% in terms of, I don't remember the last time that he and I disagreed on something where it was an argument. It was just, let's debate this. Let's figure this out. And then we'd both leave feeling good about it, and that was that. So our relationship has always been kind of, we don't separate personal from work that much. Like I said, I'll go to family dinner and we'll start talking about business. We'll be on vacation in Colorado and we'll be sitting in the hot tub talking about business while my wife and my mom and everyone else is sitting there with us. And sometimes they're like, okay, enough business talk. Let's just have the family stuff. And it's more because we're both passionate about it and we love it. It's not so much because we're just always trying to work on it and solve problems. We just don't stop thinking about it. So, the family business dynamics for us and my experience has been outstanding. I mean, I can't really complain at all. And I don't say that just because maybe my dad or sister will watch this, but I say it because I'm serious about it. That's just kind of how we operate. So
as you, came back to the business and worked your way back up, did you ever feel like, wow, I'm an equal now, I'm an equal partner, or, let me reword this a little bit. I just think sometimes when we work with our parents, we always feel like, they're still our parent.
Yep.
But now you're a business partner with your dad. Have you gotten to that point where you just feel like you're on equal footing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, obviously coming back, I didn't feel that way, and I didn't expect to feel that way. As I kind of gained responsibility and really, call it earning your stripes or getting your feet wet or whatever, as I started doing that, I learned so much about the business, and I learned the problems in it, and I learned the opportunities and the advantages that we have. And so at a certain point, I could speak to the same level of problem solving or strategy or taking advantage of opportunities. I could speak to the same level as the rest of our leadership team and our partners. Maybe not to the same experience level of some of the very tactical things, because those guys have been there much longer than me. But I felt at a certain point that I wasn't just making things up, or I wasn't just speaking because I thought I had to speak. And I don't really know when that was, maybe a year ago. And then it kind of continued where my dad started working on bigger and bigger visionary things. We're selling a feedlot project right now that is permitted. We're doing the design on it right now, and we'll be doing construction on it next spring. 150,000 head feedlot in southwest Nebraska. It would be the largest in the United States and maybe the second largest ever in the world. So he's been designing and building feedlots for the last 25 years. This is a career highlight for anyone who works on it. And so he's kind of continued to take that and move it along because it's such a huge project. And we made a kind of intentional decision not long ago that he was going to be that, CEO visionary type person, and I was going to be more of the COO integrator, so that there was leadership in the business of someone who was focusing on the day-to-day operations of the business. Because at that point, he wasn't spending as much time on it, which was, everyone knew it. No one was upset about it, but we knew that there needed to be more intentional focus on the day-to-day operations of the business. And so when we made that move, it was, I guess, not news to anyone, but it was kind of like a turning point where I said, okay, I'm not only a part of this, but I'm responsible for it. I'm responsible for the growth or the success or the failure or the profits or the losses of this business as a whole. And that was where I was kind of like, even if I'm not to the knowledge and experience level that my dad is, I have the same amount of responsibility to carry it on.
Absolutely. What are some goals you have either personally or for the business as you look ahead to the next couple of years? Obviously, you have this big project coming up.
Yep. That's a big one. We identified that project as our biggest opportunity, but also our biggest threat, because it's so large that it could take away from the ability to service and design and build for other customers. And so we've made some intentional moves to avoid that in our business. That would be kind of a short-term goal, is to execute on that and ensure that we continue to provide and improve the level of service and output for our existing customer base while we do that large project. So that's kind of a short-term goal. Longer-term goal, we go through a strategic planning session with a facilitator, a company called Leadership Resources. If anyone's ever interested, this is a shameless plug, but they are a great company. They've really helped us. So they facilitate our strategic planning. And that has been super helpful, because now we have someone from the outside who is guiding our leadership team through these discussions, and we're not sitting there in the weeds as we can get. So they've kind of helped us shape some of those longer term goals, and there's plenty of them on the books, and I could rattle them off, but I don't need to. I would say one of the biggest things we try to do, or have done and are trying to continue to take advantage of and improve, is being the leader in the world for design and construction of beef facilities. Now, when I say beef facilities, I'm not just talking about a feedlot. I'm talking about cattle confinement buildings, talking about cattle working and processing buildings, cattle load in, load out logistics facilities. I'm talking about integrating methane digesters and different manure management and waste separation systems into the feedlot and beef sector, because quite frankly, the dairy industry has done amazing at that, and the beef sector was left behind. And so we're trying to bring those things in and integrate them into the beef sector to bring more value back to our customers. Like I said, we have a lot of involvement in the dairy industry from an engineering standpoint, but really when we look at it, if it involves cattle, whether it's beef cattle or dairy cows, that is kind of our core competency, and really where we've identified that we're going to continue to do things with swine and poultry by all means, but we're doubling down on our knowledge and our expertise. And it was a sort of hard bridge for us to cross at first when we made that decision a couple of years ago, that we were going to maybe take a step back from the swine and poultry side. But we found that when you double down on what you're really good at, your results are way better, your customers are way happier, you make more money, and ultimately your employees and your team understands the direction you're going.
Absolutely. Well, Zach, you've shared a lot of great information about your business, some great insight on what it's like to transition back to a family business. As we kind of round out our conversation, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I thought about that a little because I think, whether you're starting a business, whether you're going to be an employee in a large business or a small one, whether you're going back to a family business, whether you're starting your own, I would call it self-employed, like a solo consulting or solo service business. The biggest thing I've found out is no one's going to do things for you. Like, you can't just delegate tasks and expect them to get done. You can't just avoid the little nagging things in the back of your head that say this is a problem. You've got to go out and do it. And by that, I mean, you've got to learn how to do everything that your business or your company is offering. Or if you're working for a company and you're a specific sector of that business, that you have to understand it inside and out and be an expert at it. And what I see a lot of, especially now, I would say post-COVID, is people having a specialized skill set and doubling down on that specialized skill set, which by all means is great. But they don't exactly understand what it means to integrate other people into that and lead them and teach them. And so after a certain amount of time, you have a self-employed individual who does not have the people skills or the buzzword is emotional intelligence to bring other people along with you, because either they think they can just say, I'm going to hire you and you're going to be my video production person. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why aren't my videos done yet? I need this, and this, and I want them this long and I want them to look like this. But I've never produced a video. So I'm just asking you something that I don't even know how to do. So when you ask it of people, you've got to know exactly what you're asking for, and you've pretty much got to know how to do it.
Certainly. Great insight. Well, Zach, thank you so much for being willing to share your time with us. A lot of great nuggets of information to resonate. Thank you for tuning in to the Engler Journey Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so we can keep building people, building businesses, and building this community.